Before we begin, listener, remember to gently tap like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Tonight, I'll take you through the quiet halls where the walls still breathe, where every sound means something, even when no one's there to make it. 5 stories, each one a whisper left behind by those who never truly left. So, turn down the lights, lie still, and listen carefully, because some sounds don't stop when you wake up. Story 1. The Possession at Six Flags, New Orleans. The sign still read Six Flags, though half its letters had fallen, hanging like teeth from a long dead mouth. I came here at dusk, when the Mississippi mist began to crawl in from the river, wrapping the rusted rides in a thin, whispering veil. The air smelled of oil, salt, and mold, a scent like something trying to remember life. I told myself I came only to photograph decay, to capture stillness before it collapsed entirely. But as I crossed the cracked parking lot, I began to hear it, a rhythm beneath the wind. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. It wasn't the echo of my boots. It came from the direction of the carousel, the one they said still moved on its own during storms. When I reached it, the horses stood frozen mid-gallop, paint flaking from their glassy eyes. Yet one of them was swaying, gently, as if some unseen hand pushed it from behind. And then came a low hum, the faint sound of the carousel's motor trying to start, though the park had been without power for nearly 20 years. The air around the carousel grew dense, as if the mist itself had weight. My torchlight trembled across the painted horses' chipped eyes glistening, lips frozen in silent whinnies. Somewhere beneath the metal floor, something creaked, faint and rhythmic, as though something or someone was moving in circles below. I called out, a dry whisper that felt foolish even as it left my mouth. Hello? Anyone here? Canned. Only, the wind replied, a long sigh through the broken speakers. Then, a laugh. Not loud, not bright, but soft and childlike, fluttering through the fog like a memory trying to form words. I swung the torch toward the sound. Nothing. Just rows of empty stalls, a collapsed tent, a deflated balloon trapped beneath weeds. Still, the laugh clung to the air. My chest felt tight. I tried to focus on the rational, the way sound can bend through fog, the way echoes deceive. Yet, as I turned away from the carousel, the pattern returned. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. This time closer. I followed the noise past the ticket booths and toward the roller coaster, its rails twisted like a skeleton reaching for the clouds. The tapping was louder now, metal against metal, deliberate, mechanical. My camera hung around my neck, the lens fogged from the humidity. I lifted it anyway, framing the coaster in my shot. Through the lens, I saw motion faint. At the top of the track, a silhouette, hunched, watching. I blinked, lowered the camera. The silhouette was gone. My heart thudded unevenly. For the first time, I noticed the air was no longer just mist, it was warm, breathing. The smell of iron filled my throat, and the carousel behind me began to hum again, a strained wheeze of decayed machinery. I stepped backward, slowly, feeling the crunch of broken glass beneath my boots, and that was when I heard it, a voice, faint and distant, whispering my name. It didn't echo. It wasn't wind. It was clear, close, and human. I heard you, it said. You came back. Well, ass. My torch flickered, and every shadow in the park seemed to turn its head toward me. The voice lingered long after it faded, like smoke curling through my thoughts. I stood frozen near the roller coaster's gate, waiting for logic to return for the wind, or my mind to explain away what I'd just heard. But logic had no sound, only the park did. A slow clink, clink, clink echoed from above the coaster's chain lift, dragging itself to life, though the ride hadn't moved since 2005. The metal shrieked under tension, grinding like teeth. Each click reverberated through the fog, bouncing from rusted beams until it felt as if the entire park were breathing in rhythm. I moved closer, unable to stop myself. The ground was slick, a film of moss over concrete. Beneath my boots came faint, hollow knocks. 3. Pause. 3. The same pattern as before, as if the earth itself remembered it. The coaster's train stood motionless on the track, its cars skeletal, eaten by salt and wind. Yet I heard the distinct sound of weight settling into the first seat, leather straining, bolts creaking, something pressing down. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then went dark completely. I didn't curse, didn't breathe. I simply listened. Wind whispered through the steel skeleton above me, carrying 1,000 tiny sounds, jingling chains, swinging signs, a dripping echo from somewhere unseen. But layered beneath them was another rhythm, footsteps pacing around me, circling wider each time. Crunch, crunch, pause. A chill prickled up my spine. I raised my camera, using the faint red light from its dying battery as my only vision. The screen showed shapes moving within the mist, faint, shifting forms that dissolved when I looked directly at them. But one shape remained, a child-sized figure standing at the base of the coaster stairs. She was still, perfectly still. I couldn't make out her face, only her outline, head slightly tilted, hair tangled by the wind. Her hands hung at her sides, and every few seconds she twitched, as though something beneath her skin pulled her strings. Then, quietly, she began to tap the metal railing beside her. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I whispered, barely audible. Who are you? In text. The figure tilted her head further, and though I couldn't see her eyes, I felt them meet mine. The air thickened. I could almost hear her breathing, shallow and fast, like someone on the verge of laughter or sobbing. And then, all at once, every sound in the park erupted. The carousel roared to life behind me, its organ playing in warped, dragging tones. The Ferris wheel groaned as it turned, lights sputtering in brief red pulses. The roller coaster chain screamed, snapping in half with a crack that thundered through the ground. The child's figure blurred, split, and vanished into the noise. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears, but the sound crawled inside me. It wasn't coming from around me anymore, it was inside my skull, a low mechanical hum that synced perfectly with my heartbeat. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence fell. No wind, no hum, not even my own breathing. Only one last sound remained, a single hollow exhale. Right behind me. I didn't move, couldn't. The air behind me was warm, a human warmth, faint and wrong, like the breath of someone standing too close. My torch, dead moments ago, flickered weakly to life, throwing a cone of pale light across the cracked asphalt. Nothing there. And yet, I still felt it. A weightless presence, something aware. I forced myself to turn. The carousel stood still again, but every painted horse now faced me, Their glass eyes gleamed in unison, catching the light as if alive. I tried to laugh at the absurdity, but the sound that escaped my mouth wasn't a laugh. It was a quiet, shaky exhale, trembling like the surface of a pond. Then the voice came again, closer this time, a whisper almost brushing my ear. "You heard the knocking, didn't you? 8. I spun toward the sound. Nothing but fog. They always come back when someone listens. And first, my throat tightened. "Who are you?" I asked. The words felt clumsy, heavy, as though the air didn't want to carry them. A low hum began to rise beneath my feet, a vibration spreading through the ground, steady, pulsing. It was the same rhythm again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. But this time it wasn't echoing through the park, it was coming from under me. I stepped back, but the sound followed, like footsteps shadowing my own. The fog began to thin, revealing the outline of the carousel's central platform, a trapdoor half swallowed by rust and vines. The vibration came from there. Against all reason, I knelt and pressed my hand to the metal. It was warm. Then, something from the other side pressed back. I recoiled, heart hammering, but curiosity that cursed. Unstoppable instinct pulled me forward again. I gripped the edge of the hatch and pulled. It resisted, then gave way with a wet, dragging groan. The smell hit first, stagnant water, oil, and something else, something alive. A tunnel sloped beneath the carousel, lit faintly by emergency bulbs still glowing after decades. My breath came slow and uneven as I descended the narrow steps, camera shaking in my hands. At the bottom, water pooled ankle deep. The knocking was louder now, echoing through the concrete corridor. I followed it past broken generators, a toppled control panel, and graffiti half swallowed by mold. When I turned the last corner, I froze. There was someone standing at the far end, or something wearing someone. It looked human from the shoulders down. Soaked clothes clinging to bone, pale skin gleaming beneath the flashlight. But its head was wrong, bent too far to one side, like the neck had been broken and reset badly. It twitched in small, mechanical jerks. In its hand, it held a steel rod, tapping it against the wall. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. "You came back," it said again, the same voice as before, but this time I could see the lips moving. I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs refused. My body didn't feel like mine. My fingers twitched without permission, and somewhere deep inside my skull, I heard a low hum begin to rise inside me. The thing tilted its head further, bones cracking. "It's easier this way," it whispered. "You'll keep the park alive. And in case for leave." My camera slipped from my hands, hitting the water with a splash that echoed far too loudly. The sound broke the moment the figure jerked forward suddenly, every joint snapping in wrong directions, rushing toward me in uneven, puppet-like movements. I stumbled backward, tripping over cables, and the world went black as my flashlight hit the ground. In the dark, I heard only the knocking now from inside my chest. When I opened my eyes again, the sky above was the color of rust. The storm had passed, leaving a strange twilight in its wake, not quite night, not quite dawn. I was lying at the edge of the park, near the collapsed food court, my clothes soaked through and covered in mud. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed everything: the carousel, the voice, the thing in the tunnel, all of it a feverish trick, born of exhaustion and heat. The distant city lights glimmered beyond the fence, reminding me that the world still existed beyond this nightmare. I pushed myself upright, coughing water from my lungs. My camera bag was gone, my torch too, but my phone somehow still hung from its strap around my neck. Its battery icon blinked red, and when I unlocked the screen, the gallery opened automatically. There were new photos, dozens of them, each one blurred, warped as though taken mid-motion. But in every frame, at the center, stood me. My reflection, my posture, my face. Only my eyes were closed in every shot. I swallowed hard. Maybe I'd set the timer by mistake, or maybe the phone had glitched in the dark. I wanted to believe that, needed to. The park around me was silent, except for the occasional groan of metal in the wind. No voices now, no laughter. I could almost hear my heartbeat slow, uneven, but mine. Then the carousel music began again. Faint at first, a low, trembling tune drifting through the fog. The melody was wrong, notes dragging, stretching, like something trying to imitate joy, but forgetting what it sounded like. I stood up too fast, dizziness swimming through my skull. "No," I whispered, "not again," to Azette. But the music grew clearer, accompanied by the familiar tap, tap, tap of the rhythm. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. I turned toward the sound, but the park was empty. Every direction looked the same. Rides half swallowed by vines, signs swinging gently in the wind. I tried to find the main gate, but my feet carried me in the opposite direction, deeper into the park. It was only when I reached the carousel again that I realized something was wrong with my shadow. Under the pale orange sky, it stretched far too long, bending in ways that didn't match my body. When I lifted my hand, the shadow hesitated before following, and when I lowered it again, the shadow's arm didn't move at all. The humming returned deep, low, vibrating through my ribs. My vision pulsed, edges of the world breathing in and out. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the noise was inside me, an engine starting beneath my skin. The air thickened, every breath tasting of rust and salt. My reflection in a broken mirror near the carousel flickered my lips, smiling, though I wasn't. "It's all right," a voice murmured inside my head. "You're home now, A's." I stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the platform. My hands shook violently, muscles locking and releasing without command. I screamed, but it came out as a laugh, soft, airy, and not mine. Then, just as suddenly, the world steadied. The music faded, the knocking stopped. I was standing still, calm, breathing evenly, the carousel before me silent once more. I should have felt relief. I did, for a moment. Until I noticed the smallest detail. Every painted horse was turned away from me now. And in the reflection of one cracked mirror, I was still smiling. The smile in the mirror didn't fade when I turned away. It stayed there, frozen in that pale reflection, a perfect copy of my face that moved just a fraction slower than I did. When I raised a trembling hand to wipe the sweat from my brow, my reflection hesitated, then mirrored the motion with a jerk, like a puppet missing a cue. The air tasted metallic, and something deep inside, my ears began to ring high, sharp and alive. The carousel behind me creaked, gears grinding as if it wanted to speak. The wind had stopped entirely. Even the flags on the distant roller coaster hung dead and limp. Then I heard the whisper again. "Don't fight it. You already said yes, and foresee." I didn't remember saying anything, but the longer I stood there, the more the words felt true. My reflection smiled wider, its lips splitting just enough for a drop of black liquid to fall from the corner of its mouth. I stepped back. My legs didn't obey. They stepped forward instead, carrying me closer to the mirror, my hands reaching toward the glass as if something else were guiding them. "You came back," the voice murmured. "We waited." "Rye." A sudden metallic clang broke the trance. One of the horses behind me snapped free from its pole and crashed to the ground. Dust billowed in a cloud of ash and feathers. The illusion shattered for a moment, and I ran. The fog clung to me like hands as I stumbled through the maze of rides, every path folding back on itself. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, skeletal against the orange sky. I aimed for it, a landmark, something solid, something that could prove the world hadn't slipped entirely into nightmare. But with every step, the knocking followed. 3 taps on metal. Pause. 3 more. Sometimes behind me, sometimes beneath my feet, sometimes inside my chest. I reached the base of the Ferris wheel and found the gate torn off, lying twisted in the weeds. The cabins above groaned in the wind that wasn't there. I climbed the access ladder, desperate to get above the fog, to see the city lights again. Halfway up, I felt the vibration return, a heartbeat that wasn't mine, echoing through the steel. I looked down. There, at the base of the wheel, stood the girl again. The small figure I'd seen before, hair plastered to her cheeks, dress heavy with water. She tilted her head in that broken way, watching me climb. Her lips moved, and though I couldn't hear her over the rising wind, I understood the words. "You never left." Too self-dent. The cabins began to sway. Metal screamed. The entire structure shuddered, trying to move. I clung to the ladder as one of the top cars broke loose, tumbling down in a shower of sparks and dust. Through the chaos, the knocking became deafening, booming through my skull, matching my pulse until I couldn't tell which was which. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it only grew louder, until I realized it wasn't sound anymore. It was breathing. Mine. And something else's. The world tilted. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was climbing up or down. The sky had gone black, or maybe it was the ground. The lights of the park blinked weakly to life, one by one, powered by nothing, flickering in erratic patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the knocking. At the top of the wheel, I hauled myself into the nearest cabin, gasping. My fingers bled from rusted metal. The seat inside was warm. I looked down and saw another hand already resting on the seat beside me. Pale, still, waiting. Then, in the glass of the cabin window, I saw my reflection again. Only this time, it wasn't copying me. It turned its head slowly, eyes black and shining, and smiled with both rows of teeth human and something else behind them. "You remember now," it said. "You were the first, and refriend." The cabin jolted violently. The wheel turned, groaning back to life, lifting me higher and higher. Below, the park lit up in sickly amber light. The carousel spinning, the roller coaster trembling, the tunnels below glowing red like veins beneath skin. The reflection leaned closer to the glass, whispering through the static hum in my skull. "Don't jump. That's sand." But I did. The air tore past me, the wind screaming through the metal skeleton of the ride. For a heartbeat, I felt weightless, free. The knocking stopped. The voice fell silent. The world held its breath. Then impact. Darkness. When I came to, I was lying in the mud again, at the edge of the park. My body ached, but I was alive. The lights were gone. The fog had lifted. Only the empty skeletons of rides remained. I staggered to my feet and looked toward the city. The gate to the park stood open, as if inviting me to leave. But as I took my first step forward, I heard it faint, gentle, distant. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Coming not from behind me, from inside my chest. By dawn, the world looked harmless again. The fog had thinned into ribbons, hurling lazily above the asphalt as the sun clawed its way over the drowned skyline of New Orleans. The ruined Ferris wheel loomed behind me, unmoving now, nothing more than steel and silence. I walked toward my car, parked half sunken in the mud by the service gate. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the ground wanted me back. When I finally reached the door and pulled it open, I saw the interior lights flicker weakly to life. The keys were still in the ignition. The engine turned over on the first try. Relief hit like cold water. I laughed, a dry, fractured sound that didn't quite belong to me. The rear view mirror vibrated slightly as the engine steadied. That was when I noticed it. Condensation had formed on the glass 6 perfect circles of fogged breath, spaced evenly, pulsing faintly with each beat of my heart. 3. Pause. 3. I wiped the mirror with my sleeve. The fog cleared, but behind my reflection, in the back seat, something moved. A faint silhouette, small, childlike, leaning forward, lips almost touching my ear. I spun around. The seat was empty. But my reflection didn't turn with me. It stayed facing forward, smiling, while I stared into the vacant upholstery. And as the morning light spilled through the cracked windshield, I saw it blink slow, deliberate, patient. Drive, it whispered. There's somewhere else we need to go. Ren. The engine purred, steady and familiar, but when I placed my hands on the wheel, they felt wrong, colder, stronger, almost not mine. My fingers flexed once, twice. Then, without command, they tightened around the steering wheel. The road stretched ahead, long and endless, pointing north toward the mountains, toward something unseen. And before I could stop myself, my foot pressed the accelerator. The radio clicked on by itself, static. Then, faintly, the sound of running water, a stream, a hot spring, and a girl's gentle humming beneath it. The next story had already begun. Story 2, The Mute Daughter at the Hot Spring Inn. The road led me higher into the mountains until the air turned thin and metallic. Dawn had burned away the city fog, but the horizon still glowed a dull orange, like a wound refusing to heal. My car's radio whispered faint static, occasionally stitching itself into the sound of running water, a stream trickling over stone, and a soft, humming voice that rose and fell in rhythm with my heartbeat. By noon, I saw it, the old Aokigahara Hot Spring Inn, wedged between cedar trees, its roof caved under snow and moss. The sign out front, written in fading kanji, still promised eternal rest and gentle silence. The parking lot was empty, except for a single red parasol half buried in dust. The air smelled faintly of sulfur and something sweet, like wilted flowers left too long in water. When I stepped inside, the tatami mats sighed beneath my boots. The sound echoed through the empty lobby, except it wasn't empty. At the far end of the corridor stood a girl in a white yukata, hair unkempt, face hidden. She didn't move, didn't breathe, only watched, and from somewhere deeper within the inn, I heard the faint knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock, knock. The girl was gone when I blinked. One moment she had been standing in the corridor, still as a statue. The next, there was only the hiss of the wind pushing through a cracked paper wall. I called out, softly at first, "Hello? I'm just passing through. Why then it has section?" My voice came back doubled, distorted by the empty space, as if the building were repeating my words from somewhere beneath the floorboards. The inn smelled of old wood and warm stone. Steam drifted lazily through the hall, curling from the direction of the baths. I should have turned back. Every sign told me I wasn't meant to be here, but the air carried a faint note of music, a humming so delicate I wasn't sure if it was real. The same tune I'd heard on the radio. Down the corridor hung framed photographs. Smiling guests, mountain scenery, a small girl with her father, both holding folded towels. The man's expression was proud. Hers was blank, her mouth slightly open as though she'd been about to speak, but never learned how. Dust filmed every surface, yet the footprints leading toward the baths were fresh, small, bare, wet. My breath shortened. I followed. The changing room was dim, lit only by the last light, seeping through the bamboo shutters. My reflection in the mirror looked half ghosted, as though the glass refused to fully remember me. From somewhere behind the wall came a soft splash, then a child's voice, not speaking, but humming, broken by the sound of dripping water. I pushed the door to the open-air pool. Steam rolled out like breath from the mouth of the earth. The water below shimmered dark and thick, not clear like spring water should be. A single parasol floated lazily in the pool's center, spinning slowly. Beneath it, a ripple spread outward, not circular, but long, as though something just beneath the surface had brushed against the stone. The humming stopped. Then came the tapping again. 3 against the edge of the pool. Pause. 3 more. I turned back toward the changing room and saw the same girl standing there, water dripping from her hair, her white yukata soaked through. She lifted a finger to her lips, eyes wide, pleading for silence. Behind her, the shoji screen began to slide open on its own, inch by inch, and a cold breath of air slithered through. The girl shook her head slowly, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Then I understood. She wasn't warning me to be quiet. She was telling something else not to wake. The shoji slid wider with a sigh that sounded almost alive. Steam thickened until the lamps along the corridor flickered and died, leaving only the dim pulse of light from the bathing pool. The girl remained motionless, pale, trembling, her wet hair sticking to her face in thin black ribbons. I took a step toward her. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." Crashed. Her eyes darted past me, not at me. She lifted her hand again, the same warning gesture, finger pressed to her lips. Then she pointed toward the far end of the corridor, where the mist hung darker, heavier. That was when the tapping began again. Slow, deliberate, closer this time. 3 knocks on wood. Pause. 3 more echoing beneath the floorboards like a heartbeat in the walls. The sound crawled through the hallway, under the panels, rising into the beams above. The entire inn began to pulse with it, the rhythm of something sleeping beneath us, stirring. I whispered, "Is someone here with you? Ready from stonks?" The girl shook her head violently. Then, without warning, she turned and ran toward the back of the inn. Her bare feet slapped the tatami in perfect rhythm with the knocking. I followed, drawn by some desperate need to understand. The corridor led to a staircase spiraling down into the earth. Each step I took made the boards moan, as if they resented my weight. The air grew warmer, thick with the smell of sulfur and wet stone. I could hear the hum of water below the true heart of the hot spring. Halfway down, I found the girl again. She stood before a narrow door half submerged in steam. Her hand rested against it, trembling. On the wood, someone had carved kanji old, nearly erased. "Do not open during the night. Will enter self." Her lips moved soundlessly. Then she pushed the door open. A wave of heat struck me, heavy as breath. The chamber beyond was circular, lined with dark stone. The pool at its center, faintly glowing from beneath, as though fire smoldered in the depths. The air vibrated with a deep hum, almost a chant, echoing off the curved walls. The girl stepped inside. Her reflection wavered in the water, then split two images of her standing side by side. One of them smiled. My ears rang. The humming turned to whispering, voices overlapping in a dozen tongues. I felt dizzy, unmoored, the ground trembling beneath my feet. The girl reached toward the pool. Steam clung to her arms like fingers. Then splash. The reflection fell into the water while the real girl stayed standing, dry and unmoving. Ripples spread outward, glowing faintly red, each pulse matching my heartbeat. The knocking returned not from the walls this time, but from below the water. Slow, patient. I stumbled back, hitting the stone wall behind me. The sound was everywhere now, inside my ears, inside my skull. The water's surface began to bulge upward, as if something beneath it was pressing, yearning to emerge. The girl turned her head toward me. Her lips moved again. No sound, just one word I could read in the movement. Run. I should have run. Every instinct screamed for me to flee that place, yet my feet rooted to the stone. The girl's reflection still rippled in the water, smiling faintly up at her, a perfect mirror, except for one detail. In the reflection, her lips moved. The real girl's mouth stayed still. The whispers grew clearer, not louder, clearer. They spoke in rhythm with the knocking below the pool, words folding over one another like waves. I couldn't understand the language, but I felt its meaning deep in my bones, a kind of summoning, or remembering. The girl turned back to me, eyes glinting in the half-light. For the first time, she tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but only a strangled hiss came out, the sound of air escaping from somewhere deep and ancient. Her body convulsed as if she were fighting something inside. Then her hand shot out toward me. Her grip was impossibly cold. "Don't listen," she gasped, voice shredded. "It needs to be heard and free." Before I could respond, the water erupted. Steam burst upward like breath from a furnace, scalding my face. The pool's glow brightened to a furious red, and something with hands broke the surface. Pale, slick, jointed, wrong. It gripped the edge of the stone and began to pull itself up, inch by inch. At first I thought it was a drowned body. Then I saw its eyes wide, lidless, shining with the same dull light as the water. Its mouth hung open, releasing that rhythm I now recognized as knocking, its jaw snapping with each beat. 3. Pause. 3. The girl screamed without sound, clutching her ears. I stumbled backward, my spine hitting the wet wall. The thing climbed higher, its limbs too long, its body trembling as though each movement cost agony. When it finally dragged its head above the edge, I saw my own face reflected in the water beside it, and the same dull, lidless eyes staring back. For a moment, I couldn't tell which reflection was mine. The girl collapsed beside the pool, her body convulsing. hands clawing at her throat. I tried to reach her, but my limbs felt sluggish, disconnected. The air vibrated with a hum so low it rattled my teeth. I realized it wasn't sound anymore, it was inside me, syncing with my pulse. The creature's hand shot forward, grabbing my wrist. Its grip was firm but trembling, as if uncertain whether to hold or to pull me under. Its voice came not through the air but through the bones of my arm. We keep the silence. We feed it. 1. I yanked free, stumbling toward the steps. My vision blurred, heat and cold folding into one another. Behind me, I heard the splash again, heavy, deliberate. Then the humming stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum. Even my breath made no sound. I reached the stairs and turned back once. The girl stood again, though I hadn't seen her rise. Her wet hair hung over her face. She pointed to the pool, then to herself. In the rising steam, the shape beneath the water began to mimic her movements. Slowly, deliberately, she whispered, or maybe it was only the air forming words for her. It wears whoever listens to space. The glow beneath the water dimmed to black. I ran. Up the stairs, through the corridor, past the photographs. The walls seemed to close in, the knocking chasing me like heartbeat and echo combined. When I reached the entrance, dawn had vanished. The sky outside was deep gray, and the snow that hadn't been there before fell in slow, perfect silence. I looked back only once, through the mist. The girl stood at the doorway of the bathhouse, still, watching. Her lips didn't move, but the faintest ripple crossed the surface of the pool behind her, in rhythm with my breathing. By the time I reached the mountain road, my lungs burned and my mind buzzed with the rhythm I'd tried to outrun. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. But out here, the only sound was the wind curling through the cedars. The road twisted down toward the valley, glistening with meltwater, and the first hint of daylight broke through the clouds, pale, fragile, human. I leaned against the car door, shaking. Every part of me expected to look back and see the girl standing there. She wasn't. The inn had vanished behind the trees, consumed by fog. For the first time since leaving New Orleans, I felt the illusion of safety. When I slid into the driver's seat, the silence felt thick enough to touch. I turned the key. The engine coughed, hesitated, then caught. The heater sputtered warm air against my frozen hands. It was over. I told myself that, out loud. It's over. As it, the road wound steadily down the mountain. The snow grew lighter. The pines opened into patches of bare rock. The sun crept higher, turning the air gold. I rolled the window down a little. A scent of sulfur lingered, faint but fading. Then the radio clicked on by itself. A single tone hummed through the speakers low, steady, like a distant drum. My chest tightened. I reached for the knob to switch it off, but the button resisted, the plastic cold under my fingers. The tone shifted into a melody, slow humming, delicate, familiar. The same tune the girl had tried to sing. I yanked the radio cord free. The car went silent. I laughed shakily, more a release of air than amusement, and leaned back against the seat. The mountains rolled past in silence. But as I glanced at the side mirror, I froze. There were wet footprints across the backseat floor, small, bare, spaced perfectly apart. I stared until my eyes watered. Maybe snow had melted off my boots, I thought. But then, in the reflection, one of the footprints darkened, a droplet forming and sliding down as though someone invisible had stepped there now. I spun around. Nothing. empty seats, damp floor. The air in the car shifted warm, heavy, like steam. My breath fogged the glass. On the windshield, condensation began to trace a message in uneven strokes. Don't listen at night. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it. I reached out and wiped the glass clean, smearing the letters into water. Then I noticed my sleeve was wet. Not damp, dripping, as though I'd just pulled it from the bath. The heater roared, but the air grew colder, sinking into my bones. My head throbbed with a slow, pulsing ache that beat in time with the rhythm I'd thought I'd left behind. 3. Pause. 3. My vision blurred. The road ahead shimmered, bending like water. I blinked, and for a moment, I wasn't inside the car at all. I was standing in the steam-filled chamber beneath the inn, my reflection smiling at me from the dark surface of the pool. A horn blared. I jerked the wheel just in time to avoid an oncoming truck. The car spun, gravel spitting, before it slammed to a stop against the guardrail. My heart hammered. When I looked up, the passenger seat was wet. The air smelled of hot stone and faintly of flowers rotting in water. And there, pressed against the inside of the passenger side window, was a child's handprint, small, perfect, and dripping. I blinked, and it was gone. The world was silent again. This time, I didn't say it was over. I just drove. Sleep came in fragments after that seconds stolen from exhaustion, strung together by the hum of the engine and the faint rhythm that never left my ears. I remember the road becoming narrower, the sky darker, and the air denser, as if I were driving back into a dream I'd already survived. When my eyes opened again, the car was still, the engine silent. The world outside glowed faintly blue. Snow drifted across the windscreen. For a moment, I thought I'd parked to rest, until I noticed the steam. It rose in thin ribbons from beyond the trees. I stepped out into knee-deep snow, my breath a visible thread. The silence was immense, rushing, yet beneath it, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of water, the soft bubbling of the hot spring. No, I whispered to no one. I left you. Way. But the air carried her humming again, low and tender, echoing between the cedars. My body moved before thought could stop it. Each step into the forest left no sound, no imprint, as if the snow welcomed me back. The trees parted. There it was, the inn, perfectly intact, glowing faintly in the dark as if it had never decayed. Every window was lit. Steam drifted lazily from the baths. I felt warmth ripple through me, and behind my eyes the ache returned, that pulse that wasn't mine. The front doors opened without my touch. Inside, I heard laughter, light, familiar, the kind of laughter you remember from a dream and can't quite place. I followed it down the corridor. The photographs on the wall were clean now, no dust, no mold. In the last frame, hung at the far end, the small girl smiled beside her father, but this time, both their mouths were open in a laugh I could almost hear. The humming swelled into a song, low and haunting, in a voice that wasn't entirely human. I reached the bathhouse door. The kanji on the wood had been freshly painted again. Do not open during the night. It was night. I opened it anyway. The heat hit like a wave, carrying the scent of sulfur and lilies. The pool glowed again, faint red light breathing from its depths. Above it, steam coiled into shapes that almost looked like people, hundreds of them, moving in rhythm, inhaling, exhaling, whispering. The girl stood at the edge of the pool, her yukata dry, her hair perfectly still, despite the air's movement. "You came back," she said, and for the first time, her voice was clear, calm, almost kind. I tried to speak but couldn't. My throat refused to form words. "It's always someone who listens," she continued. "It's lonely, being silence itself." Chand. Her reflection began to move before she did. The water shimmered, and from beneath, a pale arm rose, dripping, fingers outstretched, not reaching for me, but for her. "You're not real," I whispered. She smiled, just slightly. "Neither are you." And the reflection grabbed her wrist and pulled. The sound that followed wasn't a scream, it was a sigh. The water swallowed her whole, and the ripples reached my feet, burning cold. I stumbled backward, but the floor tilted, sliding toward the pool. The knocking returned, violent this time, shaking the stone. 3. Pause. 3. From the depths, something climbed upward, a shape I couldn't fully see, shifting between faces and bodies, all familiar, all wrong. At its center was the girl's expressionless face, her mouth open in silent song. I heard my own voice, faint and distant, whispering the words she couldn't say. "We feed it. Thanks for watching." Then the water burst upward. The world went white with steam and pressure. When I could see again, I was outside, sprawled in the snow beside the drained pool. The inn was silent, its lights extinguished, my breath fogged in the air. Everything was still. The girl's yukata lay on the stones beside me, empty. Inside it, pressed flat and perfectly dry, was a single photograph, her and her father, standing beside a guest I recognized too well. Me. I stared until the edges of the picture blurred. My reflection on the wet stone beside it smiled when I didn't. A sound broke the quiet. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. But this time, it wasn't coming from the pool. It came from inside my chest, matching the rhythm of my heart. I took one step backward, then another. My pulse synced perfectly to the sound, so perfectly that when I stopped breathing, the knocking didn't. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep beneath the frozen earth, came her voice, soft, gentle, almost a lullaby. "Now you'll keep the silence too." Why? The wind picked up. The snow began to fall harder, hissing as it touched the still warm stones. And I walked into it, unsure if I was leaving or returning. By morning, the snow had sealed the road behind me. I walked until the trees thinned and the earth changed beneath my feet, the soft hiss of ice giving way to gravel and dirt. The sky above the ridge was a dull, metallic blue, the kind that never promised warmth. When I reached the clearing, I realized I had been there before, though I couldn't remember when. The skeletons of mining equipment jutted from the ground like bones. Rusted carts half buried in frost. The faint smell of sulfur and metal thick in the air. A single structure stood intact. A wooden shack, roof sagging under snow. A crooked sign nailed to its door. Yamato Gold Company, Shaft 7. Closed. Condemned. Wind pushed through the seams, carrying a hollow rhythm. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I thought it was memory. Then I heard it again, louder, deeper, from the ground itself. I crouched near the entrance to the old well shaft, its mouth sealed by a rotted cover. Frost creaked under my palms as I brushed it aside. A breath of warm air rose from below, smelling faintly of steam and lilies. And then, echoing up from the black, I, one so, my name, my own voice, calling from beneath the earth. I froze. My heartbeat matched the rhythm that had followed me for days. 3 beats. Pause. 3. Something knocked once more from below, each strike shaking the boards under my knees. I leaned closer without meaning to, staring into the dark. Far down, a light flickered red and breathing, like the glow beneath the hot spring. "Come back," my voice whispered from below. "We're still waiting." Andy estered. A cold wind passed through the trees behind me, whispering the girl's wordless song, threading it into the knocking until it became one sound heart, breath, and call. The ground trembled. Frost cracked beneath my palms. And as I turned to run, a single drop of water struck my boot warm, fragrant, impossibly out of place. The well exhaled, and somewhere beneath the mountains, the knocking began again. Story 3. The well at the abandoned gold mine. The voice from the well didn't fade. It followed me every echo of my breath, every creak of my boots on the frozen earth. By the time I reached the edge of the ravine, the sound had changed, less like calling, more like breathing. I found the mine by accident, or maybe it had been waiting, hidden deep in the Colorado Rockies. The old Blackwater gold claim had been abandoned since the 1942nd. Local maps marked it as condemned, yet the snow around the entrance was freshly disturbed, footprints half buried but leading inward, my footprints. Inside, the air was colder, older, a cold that remembered things. Rusted rails disappeared into the dark, and the smell of damp earth and iron filled my lungs. Somewhere below, water dripped in slow rhythm. 3 drops. Pause. 3. My flashlight beam trembled along the tunnel walls. Faded graffiti marked the stone words blurred by moisture. "Keep quiet. It listens." I tried to turn back. The path behind me was gone, replaced by the same wall of rock that had been ahead of me seconds before. Then, from the black mouth of the shaft, my own voice whispered again. "You've finally come home." And stack. The air thickened the deeper I went. The tunnel narrowed until I had to duck, flashlight beam wobbling across jagged stone. The smell of rust and soil sharpened into something metallic and sweet, the smell of blood that had forgotten time. Every sound was wrong here. My footsteps didn't echo. They stopped just beyond my own hearing, swallowed by the mine itself. Only the dripping continued, patient and steady. 3. Pause. 3. At first I thought it was water. Then I realized it wasn't dripping down, it was up. Drops of dark liquid lifted from the puddles near my feet, floating toward the ceiling before vanishing into the stone. My skin crawled. I tightened my grip on the torch and pressed forward. A few meters ahead, the tunnel split. To the left, the air felt colder, sterile. To the right, warmer, pulsing faintly like breath. My chest ached with every inhale. The warmth called to me, faintly familiar. The right-hand tunnel opened into a small cavern. Wooden beams lined the walls, half collapsed, the remnants of a support structure. Old mining tools lay scattered in the dirt picks. Lanterns, helmets. A single oil lamp flickered on the floor, its flame impossibly alive after all these decades. I bent to pick it up. The wick glowed without heat. Beneath the lamp, the ground was soft, not stone, but cloth. I brushed away the dust. Beneath my fingers, something shifted. It was a body, or what was left of one, wrapped in miner's canvas. The face was gone, eroded by years underground, but the chest rose and fell, slow and steady, as though it was still breathing. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the lamp. My light fell across the far wall, revealing more shapes, dozens of them, propped upright in the alcoves, like miners waiting for orders, all of them shrouded, all of them breathing. A soft hum began to weave through the silence, low, resonant, almost like a lullaby, sung through stone. I recognized the melody immediately. The girl's song, the same one from the hot spring. The bodies stirred in unison. One of them raised a hand, fingers jerking stiffly, pointing toward the far end of the cavern. There, a narrow shaft gaped open, lined with dripping pipes and chains. Faint red light pulsed from its depths, the same living glow that had shone beneath the bathwater. And then, beneath the hum, another sound began, a slow, deliberate tapping. Metal against stone. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. The bodies moved again, their breaths sinking to the rhythm. The mine was breathing with them. I lifted the torch toward the shaft. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw someone looking back at me, my own face, smiling from the dark. The entire cavern seemed to inhale. Dust lifted from the floor in a slow spiral, as if the air itself were alive. The lamp flame stretched thin and then bent toward the shaft, its light drawn downward, hungry for the red glow pulsing below. I took one step back. The mine moaned, not echo, not settling wood, but a sound like a voice forcing its way through stone. Down, down, it remembers. To friends. My flashlight flickered. The shapes of the wrapped miners trembled where they stood. Cloth cracked. A hand emerged from one bundle gray, rigid, nails black with coal dust. It reached into the air and pointed to the shaft again. The hum deepened into a chant, half rhythm, half heartbeat. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. The pattern became everything in the air, in my pulse, in the trembling of the ground. I felt it behind my eyes, vibrating through the roots of my teeth. Something inside me began to answer. I dropped the torch, covering my ears, but the sound pushed through bone instead of air. The wrapped figures began to sway gently, their breath coming faster, a chorus of dry lungs, inflating and deflating in time. The melody from the hot spring threaded through them, that same wordless lullaby, now pitched lower, slower, until it sounded like the mountain itself was humming. The red light flared, blinding. From the shaft rose heat and the smell of wet metal. I crawled backward, but the ground rippled beneath my palms like water. My reflection shimmered faintly on the shifting stone eyes, black, mouth open, whispering what I refused to hear. We are the silence. You are the echo. 1. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the damp rock. Behind me came the tearing sound of cloth. The first miner stepped free of his shroud, the skin on his face translucent and dry, eyes hollow but moving. He opened his mouth, and the knocking came from inside his chest. 3. Pause. 3. The others followed, dozens of them, forming a half circle around me. Their movements were mechanical, but their heads all turned in unison toward the shaft. From below came a gust of air, hot, almost liquid, followed by the deep thrum of machinery. Gears long rusted began to turn, metal grinding against metal, though no hand touched them. The mine was waking up. The red glow became blinding. Chains along the walls rattled like laughter. I staggered backward toward the only exit I remembered, but the tunnel had collapsed. Something moved in the shaft. At first, it looked like smoke rising, but then I saw texture folds, hands, faces, hundreds of them twisting together. The mass of bodies climbed upward slowly, using the walls for purchase, and as it rose, it hummed. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but my legs didn't listen. They took one step forward, then another, as if pulled by invisible strings. In the light's reflection, I saw my hands trembling. They were no longer shaking in fear. They were knocking. 3. Pause. 3. The sound burst through the mine, echoing from every surface, until it felt like the entire mountain was one enormous lung, breathing with me, singing through me. A moment later, the red glow engulfed everything. And from somewhere deep below, a voice, my voice, whispered through the roar. We're almost home. To face. The moment I lost my footing, the ground gave way like thin ice. Stone shattered beneath me, and the world turned red. I fell through air that felt too thick to breathe, past veins of glowing ore and dripping walls slick with something warm. When I hit the bottom, it was like striking flesh instead of rock soft, pulsing, alive. The cavern spread out before me like the inside of a rib cage. Beams of dim crimson light bled through cracks in the stone. Each glow pulsed to the same rhythm that had followed me from the park to the inn. 3 beats. Pause. 3. I tried to stand. My boots sank an inch into the floor, the surface quivering beneath me. It wasn't earth. It was some kind of membrane. The miners' knocking echoed from above, fading as they sealed the shaft. I was alone. At least, that's what I told myself until I realized the light was coming from below my feet. I knelt and brushed away dust. Beneath the thin film of rock was movement, thousands of shapes, pressed together, writhing slowly as if dreaming. Faces drifted past the surface, mouths open, eyes white, whispering soundlessly. My flashlight flickered and went dark. In the sudden black, the voices began to rise. You listened. You remembered. You belong. Crackter. The sound came from everywhere, from the walls, the air, the beating floor. My own breath fell into their rhythm, each exhale becoming another whisper. Then the ground tore open. A column of steam shot upward, glowing with red light. In its center stood me. Not a reflection, not a hallucination me. The same face, same torn jacket, eyes shining with the dull brilliance of the ore. He tilted his head, that too slow motion I'd come to recognize. I tried to warn you, he said, my voice, smooth, unbroken. Every place you went, every sound, every mirror, it was me calling back. Right. I shook my head, stumbling backward. You're not real. To have aspired. He smiled. You said that at the park. You said that at the inn. One savor. He stepped closer, leaving no footprint on the soft ground. You kept listening. That's how it spreads. One knock for each place it hides. One echo for each life it borrows. Wastened. Behind him, the writhing faces beneath the surface began to move faster, their mouths opening wider. The knocking grew louder, vibrating through my chest. I pressed my hands to my ears. Stop, where you want him. But the other me only raised his hand, mirroring the motion, and the sound grew louder. You can't silence what you've already become, he said. You carry it now. You feed it every time you breathe. Well, sides. The floor beneath me split again. Heat rose from below, searing my legs through my clothes. My double's eyes flared white, his mouth opened wider than humanly possible, the corners tearing upward in a grotesque smile. Listen, eh? The word struck like a hammer. A wave of air hit me hot, dense, vibrating with every voice that had ever echoed through the mines. In that instant, I saw flashes, the carousel's painted horses, the girl at the bathhouse, the flickering lights under the water, all connected, all pulsing with the same breath. The figure reached for me. His hand was my own, cold and heavy. "It isn't death," he whispered. "It's remembering. Aid, chat, noderzant." The ground convulsed. I slipped, half swallowed by the burning red light. My hand brushed his, and 1,000 memories that weren't mine flooded in the moment of drowning. The gasp before silence, the endless hum beneath every forgotten place. I screamed, or thought I did, but no sound came out. And then the light vanished. Silence fell again, absolute and perfect. When I opened my eyes, I was lying at the mouth of the shaft, the morning sky a thin strip of silver above me. The air smelled clean, cold. My flashlight rested beside me, still burning. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped. Then I heard breathing, slow, measured, right beside my ear. I turned my head. The ground beside me rippled once a heartbeat under the earth. I climbed until my hands were bleeding. The shaft had changed the walls slick with condensation, the ladder unfamiliar, as though the mine had rearranged itself while I lay unconscious. When I finally dragged myself through the mouth of the tunnel, the sky above had the pale, grainy hue of dawn. Fresh snow covered everything. No sign of the miners, no red glow, no sound except my breathing. I laughed, short and sharp, the sound of disbelief dressed as relief. The cold bit deep into my lungs, real cold, the kind that reminded me I was still alive. The car was where I'd left it, half buried in ice. I pulled the door open, the hinges shrieking in protest. My reflection in the window looked tired but human, no red in the eyes, no shadow moving behind me. When the engine turned over, I almost wept. I let the heater roar until the windshield cleared, until I could see the world again, the wide, empty valley, the trees bending under snow, the sunlight thin and clean. It was over. I drove until the mine disappeared from sight. A road sign blurred past, Blackwater Pass, 12 miles. The radio came alive with static, but I didn't dare touch it. I wanted silence. I needed it. Hours passed. The mountains softened into hills. The road flattened into the kind of emptiness only the American West could make long stretches of nothing. And then, faintly, I heard it. Not knocking, not humming, breathing. Slow and steady, in time with the rhythm of the tires. I turned the volume dial off. The sound stayed. I rolled down the window. Cold air rushed in, howling through the car, but beneath the wind I could still hear it. A soft exhale, close, too close. In, pause, out. My own chest matched it perfectly. The more I tried to slow my breath, the more the other one adjusted, sinking to me. At the next rest stop, I stumbled out, desperate for air. The place was deserted, a single metal bench half buried in snow. I walked to the restroom mirror and splashed my face with water so cold it burned. My reflection stared back pale, shaking, but mine, until it blinked. Once, twice, then smiled. A bead of water ran down its cheek, but not mine. The droplet hung there for a moment, then fell to the sink with a soft tap, tap, tap. 3. Pause. 3. The faucet began to drip in the same rhythm. I backed away, heart racing, but every sound in that quiet room had taken on the pattern, the ticking light, the slow hum of the pipes, even the pulse in my ears. When I stepped outside, the wind had stopped. Not a single branch moved. The snow around my boots was unbroken, except for a second set of footprints beside mine, smaller, bare. They led toward the car door. The driver's seat was empty, but the heater was still running. The air inside shimmered with warmth, and on the passenger side window, condensation had formed again. 6 circles, perfectly spaced. 3. Pause. 3. And through the glass, my own face watched me from the reflection, lips moving silently, breath fogging the window from the inside. I reached for the handle. The window cleared. The seat beside me was wet. The air smelled faintly of sulfur. I looked down at my trembling hands and saw that the dirt beneath my nails wasn't dirt at all. It was gold dust. Fresh from the mine. The gold dust glimmered faintly against my skin. Each fleck caught the morning light and pulsed as if alive. When I rubbed it away, it smeared instead, leaving a thin, metallic sheen that sank into my pores. The smell of sulfur clung to the air. I got back in the car and drove. At first, the hum of the tires steadied my mind. The world outside felt real again, snow melting into rivulets along the highway, the distant shapes of pines. I told myself I could outrun the sound. Then the world began to change. The radio, though unplugged, crackled with faint static. Between the bursts of white noise came fragments of my own voice. The same words I'd whispered into the dark well. We feed it. We remember. My reflection in the rearview mirror twitched a second out of sync with me. The road ahead shimmered, heat waves rising from the snow like breath. Something inside the car was breathing. It wasn't the heater. The rhythm was slower, heavier, coming from the vents. With each exhale, the windshield fogged. With each inhale, it cleared. I slammed the dashboard with my fist. Stop, Rasser. The engine stuttered, and then, from every speaker, came the knocking. 3. Pause. 3. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The sound filled the cabin until it was no longer noise but vibration. The world outside blurred into streaks of white and black. And then, just as suddenly, silence. When the ringing in my ears faded, I realized the road had ended. The car idled at the edge of a vast pit carved into the earth. I hadn't driven here. The mountain had brought me back. Blackwater Mine. Steam drifted upward from the open shaft. The snow around it had melted into a perfect circle of mud. I stepped out, the air warmer now, almost welcoming. You can end it, my voice whispered from the dark. Or you can keep it, and he will died. I took one step toward the edge. The ground trembled beneath my boots, the same steady rhythm that had haunted every place I'd touched. The knocking wasn't just sound anymore. It was heartbeat, the world's, mine. I understood then. Every echo, every reflection, every shimmer of gold had been the same thing. The silence learning to breathe through me. The well below glowed faintly red. I could see the movement of the air, rising and falling in slow, patient waves. If I go down, I said aloud, does it stop? And so, my reflection in the slick mud smiled. You already did. Why? The wind picked up, carrying a chorus of whispers, voices from the park. The inn, the mine, each one, an unfinished breath. They weren't calling for help anymore. They were singing. The ground split, a thin crack racing outward like lightning, circling the pit. From within the fissure poured light red, gold, and black all at once. The smell of lilies and rust filled the air. The knocking quickened. 333, until it was no longer rhythm but roar. I dropped to my knees, palms pressed against the earth that felt like skin. It pulsed beneath my hands. I could feel the thing inside me, the part that had listened too long, answering. Let us out. My heartbeat stumbled. For a moment, I felt the world hold its breath. Then the choice came to me as simple as an echo. Seal it or sing. If I stayed silent, the rhythm would die with me. If I let it speak, it would live through everything. The fissure widened, light clawed at the sky. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since the carousel, I didn't listen. I knocked back. Once. Twice. 3 times. The earth shuddered. A sound like a sigh rushed through the valley, deep and final. The light drew inward, collapsing into itself. The mine screamed once, then fell silent. When I opened my eyes, the pit was gone. Only frozen ground remained, smooth and dark as glass. The morning light had turned pale gray, empty. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the quiet. No hum, no tapping, no voice. Then, from somewhere deep beneath the new ice, a single, faint response. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. And the echo that followed wasn't mine. By the time I reached the base of the mountain, the sun had already sunk behind the ridge. The world felt hollow in its quiet, no wind, no birds, not even the creak of ice. The silence I'd fought for so long had finally come, but it wasn't peace. It was waiting. I stopped at a small diner on the edge of the mining town, one of those roadside places that smell of burnt coffee and engine oil. The waitress, an old woman in a flannel apron, didn't ask where I'd been. She just looked at the mud on my boots, the thin line of dried blood along my wrist, and said softly, "You came down from Blackwater?" "One." I nodded. Her eyes flicked toward the television behind the counter. The news was running silent footage, a helicopter sweeping over the mountains, a voiceover barely audible beneath static. Geological tremors, subsurface heat, discovery of new ore veins, possibly gold. I felt my stomach twist. On screen, the camera zoomed in on a fissure that hadn't been there before, a perfect circle carved into the earth, glowing faintly red. "Seems the mine's waking up again," the woman murmured. Outside, a low rumble rolled through the valley. The mugs on the counter rattled, spoons chiming softly. 3 times. Pause. 3 again. The woman's smile froze. "After all these years," she whispered. I turned toward the window. The hills were trembling. In the dimming light, streaks of gold ran down the slopes like veins of molten blood, pulsing faintly in rhythm with my heartbeat. I pressed my hand against my chest. It answered. 3 beats. Pause. 3. The silence broke. Somewhere under the asphalt, the earth exhaled a warm breath that fogged the diner's glass from the inside. The old woman stepped back, eyes wide. "You shouldn't have come back," she said. But I was already watching my reflection in the window. It wasn't moving anymore. It was breathing. And from deep within the mountain, as if the world itself had begun to remember, came the faint sound of shovels striking rock, the rhythm of men working in the dark. Story 4. The Road Builders. The mountains of Colorado shrank behind me, but the sound didn't. It hid inside the rhythm of the tires, in the rattle of tools, in the slow clatter of shovels against stone. Wherever there was work, wherever the ground was split open, the knocking followed. By summer, I'd taken a job with a state road crew in northern Wyoming, nothing glamorous, just dust and diesel. They were laying a new stretch of highway across a dry valley called Devil's Spine. The men joked about the name. I didn't. At night, the earth never cooled. The heat rose through the gravel as if the road itself had a fever. When we drove the stakes into the soil, the sound came back up through the metal, soft, hollow, alive. 3 strikes. Pause. 3. The others said it was groundwater echoing through the shale. But I knew that rhythm. On the 4th night, when the wind finally died, I woke to a different sound outside my tent. Not knocking this time. Flapping. Slow, heavy, deliberate, like wings too large to belong to any bird that should exist this high in the desert air. The wind returned just before dawn, carrying dust that tasted of rust. It whispered through the canvas of the tents, setting the metal poles humming in a tone that reminded me too much of the mine. The others were still asleep: Harlan, the foreman, Torres, the mechanic, and 2 younger guys whose names I hadn't learned because I'd stopped asking. The noise came again, faint at first, a slow flap, flap, pause, flap. Too measured to be random wind. I stepped outside. The night still clung to the desert, purple and bruised. Our work lights threw small, trembling halos over the unfinished road. Far out where the floodlights ended, I could just make out movement, a shimmer, like heat mirage, except the air was cold. I called out, "Harlan," and only the echo answered, repeating my voice a beat too late, slightly distorted, as though someone underground were saying it back to me. The dust shifted near the machinery. One of the floodlights flickered, then went out with a sharp pop. The darkness that followed wasn't normal darkness. It had weight. A shadow passed across the remaining lights. For an instant, I thought a huge sheet of canvas had torn loose and was drifting overhead until I saw the shape tilt, wings folding into themselves, vanishing into the gulch beyond the sight. I ran to wake the others. They didn't stir easily. Their bodies were stiff, faces pale and clammy as if they'd been sleeping in snow instead of heat. Torres blinked at me through half-lidded eyes. "You heard it too," he mumbled. The knocking, "Tarrant is quieted at other stand." The word froze me. I thought it was just wind. I lied. He smiled faintly, still half asleep. "It's under the road," he said. "Been there since we broke the first layer of stone." Have so. When the sun finally rose, the desert looked harmless again, flat, endless, the sky too blue to be real. We worked in silence. Every strike of the hammer against rebar echoed longer than it should have. Beneath the clanging, I could hear the hollow reply coming from below. By midday, Harlan called us over. He'd found something while grading the next section, a cavity under the roadbed, maybe an old sinkhole. We peered inside. At the bottom was a hollow space the size of a room, filled with bones, hundreds of them, bleached white, arranged in a perfect spiral. Torres swore under his breath. Harlan spat. "Animal den," he said, but his voice was shaking. When I leaned closer, I noticed the pattern at the center of the spiral. 6 small depressions in the dust, perfectly round. 3. Pause. 3. That night, none of us slept. The wind carried the scent of something burnt and the low, rhythmic sound of wings circling above the camp. The desert changed on the 5th night. The air grew thicker, the heat turned damp, and the ground began to hum underfoot like a held breath. Nobody talked much anymore. Even the radios stayed off static, made the men twitch. We worked through the dusk, the sky bleeding from orange into rust, and every strike of the hammer against steel spikes echoed wrong, too hollow, too deep. It sounded as if the earth were answering from far below, knocking back. By the time the floodlights flickered on, Torres was gone. We'd last seen him loading asphalt drums into the grader. When Harlan called for him at supper, no one answered. His tent was still zipped from the inside, his boots neatly by the flap, but the prints outside the camp fence bare, small, pressed deep into the dust, led off into the dark beyond the lights. The wind died completely after that. Without it, every sound seemed too close. The creak of the metal poles, the whisper of our own movements, the faint flap, flap that drifted above the tents like breath. No one wanted to say it, but we were all thinking the same thing. It was following us here. Around midnight, the ground started to vibrate again. I pressed my hand to the half-poured asphalt. It was warm. Not from the machines, it pulsed like skin. The noise built slowly. First a low thrum, then a chorus of overlapping knocks. 3, pause, 3. The rhythm that had crawled through the mine and the hot spring now beat under the road we'd built. Then, from the direction of the ridge, something screamed. Not human, not animal. The sound was like metal tearing mixed with wind funneling through hollow bone. The floodlights dimmed, one by one, until only the generator's pale glow remained. In that half-light, I saw it. At first, I thought it was smoke rising from the earth. Then it unfolded. It had the shape of a man stretched wrong arms too long, back hunched, its skin as dark as the asphalt beneath our feet. Wings sprouted from its shoulders, vast and tattered, their edges glinting faintly gold like dust catching light. Each movement of those wings stirred the air with the smell of burnt metal and lilies. Harlan screamed. The creature's head snapped toward him, but there were no eyes, only a slit where a mouth should have been. From it came that same 3-beat rhythm, louder now, drilling into bone. The men scattered. Some ran for the trucks, others froze where they stood. I couldn't move. The creature hovered over the half-built road, wings folding inward until it seemed to melt back into the surface, sinking through the asphalt like smoke into water. Then the silence fell again, total, perfect. We found Harlan's flashlight still on, lying beside a hole in the road no wider than a man's shoulders. Steam rose from it, pulsing faintly red. When I leaned close, I heard breathing from below, slow, measured. The same pattern I'd carried with me from the mine. And then, softly, a whisper rose from the hole, Torres's voice. "It's digging up, not down. 2-1. The next morning, the air smelled of burnt rubber and rain that never came. We gathered around the hole where Harlan's flashlight still burned, a thin coil of steam rising from the asphalt. No one wanted to go near it. The light from the torch flickered, then steadied again, as if something below was breathing in rhythm with us. "Fill it," Harlan rasped finally. His voice was hoarse from screaming the night before. We started shoveling gravel and tar, the sound of each strike sharp in the still air. Every scoop echoed like hitting a drumhead, hollow, alive. By noon, the hole was gone. A flat patch of new asphalt gleamed in the sun, black and unbroken, but the ground beneath our boots continued to thrum softly, and the generator stuttered every few seconds, coughing out bursts of static that almost formed words. I wanted to leave to tell them that this wasn't something you could bury, but before I could speak, we heard the first knock. 3. Pause. 3. The road answered us. The tar bubbled, rippling outward in waves that shimmered with gold dust. Cracks spread like lightning bolts across the surface. From each fissure came a whisper, hundreds of them, weaving together into a low chant. Torres's voice was among them. "Stop," I said, backing away. "Don't touch it." And for Myers. But Harlan stepped forward. He was shaking, eyes wide, lips moving like he was praying. "It's just gas pockets," he muttered. "Just pressure. Trust." He knelt and pressed his hand to the crack. The road opened. A jet of heat burst upward, throwing him backward. The asphalt peeled away like skin, revealing not soil beneath but something living, layers of fibrous tissue, slick and pulsing with light. I stared into it and saw movement, veins branching out, curling toward us, glowing gold at the edges. "This isn't the ground," I whispered. "It's feeding. Crescent." The air grew heavy. Shadows rippled across the valley floor, converging toward the road. A sudden wind howled through the machines, rattling chains, tearing tents loose. And then we saw the wings again. They burst from the asphalt in a storm of heat and dust, not one pair this time, but dozens, black and glistening, unfurling from the cracks like flowers of flesh. Each beat of those wings sent shockwaves through the earth, each gust carrying the stench of sulfur and burnt oil. The sky dimmed. The sun disappeared behind a veil of swirling dust. Harlan screamed again, swinging a shovel at one of the emerging shapes. The metal met something solid and stuck. The wing shuddered, then wrapped around him, folding him in. When it opened again, he was gone. The rest of the crew broke and ran. I followed, stumbling through the shifting dust until I reached the supply truck. The radio inside had switched on by itself, voices whispering over the static. "The road's a vein. Keep digging. Keep feeding. Weigh sand." I turned the key, but the engine only groaned. The ground beneath the truck quivered. In the side mirror, I saw them, the shapes crawling out of the road. Pale arms, long fingers, black wings dragging through the gravel. And above it all, a sound like breathing, steady and patient. 3. Pause. 3. It wasn't coming from the creatures. It was coming from below them. Something vast was moving under the valley. The wings were only fragments, pieces of a body too big to comprehend. I slammed the door open and ran. The road behind me buckled and split, swallowing the machines, the tents, the men. From the fractures rose the glow, gold and red and alive. By the time I reached the ridge, the valley was collapsing inward, slow and deliberate, like the world taking a deep breath. And in that breath, I heard every voice I'd ever known: the girl at the hot spring, the reflection in the mine, the carousel's whisper, all speaking at once through the wind. It's almost here. We're south. When I woke, the world was quiet again. The ceiling above me was made of pine, not canvas. A weak smell of antiseptic replaced the reek of tar and diesel. My hands were bandaged. The skin beneath burned as though I'd held them too close to a forge. I was lying in a cot inside a ranger outpost, miles from the construction site. A fan turned lazily overhead, slicing the silence into slow, even beats. 3. Pause. 3. I closed my eyes. A voice, steady, palm cut through the haze. You were lucky. Highway patrol found you walking in the middle of Devil's Spine Road. No memory of how you got there. My no. A man stood by the window. The park ranger. His uniform looked too clean for the dust that clung to his boots. Your crew? He asked. I hesitated. Gone, I said finally. The road collapsed. There was... He lifted a hand. No collapse recorded. The site's fine. They're still working. Jor. I sat up too fast. The room tilted. Through the window behind him, I saw the valley below bright in the morning sun, dotted with trucks and fresh asphalt. The road curved gracefully across the plain, newly paved and shining like obsidian. At the center of the valley, the construction site was alive again. Men moved. Machines crawled. The road stretched further than before its path, looping inward in a slow, deliberate spiral. See, the ranger said. They found a more stable foundation. You can rest easy now. Howard's. I stared at the road. The pattern wasn't random. The spiral was perfect, geometric, just like the arrangement of bones we'd uncovered. I need to talk to them, I said, standing. The ranger smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. You already did. Well, he turned away from the window. His reflection in the glass lingered a moment longer than his body, mouth still moving, though he was silent. I stepped backward. My heart began to match the rhythm of the fan. 3 beats. Pause. 3. Outside, engines roared to life. The floor vibrated faintly beneath my feet. I pressed my hand to the wall. It was warm. The ranger reached into his jacket and handed me something small and metallic. My ID tag. It was bent, blackened around the edges, like it had been through fire. I think this belongs to you, he said. As I took it, a smear of gold dust transferred onto my palm. It shimmered briefly, then sank into my skin. Behind him, the radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice came through, faint and distant. Section 4 laid and sealed. Spirals complete, ready for activation. Weld. The ranger turned toward the sound. Copy that. Let's talk. Then he looked back at me. His pupils were dilated, shimmering faintly. They're nearly done. Tase. I stumbled out of the cabin. The air outside was thick, heavy with the scent of asphalt and lilies. The wind carried a low hum from the valley, the steady mechanical heartbeat of rollers and mixers blending into something deeper, more organic. As I reached the ridge, I saw it clearly. The road wound in a perfect spiral, converging on a single dark circle at its center. From up here, it looked exactly like an eye. And as the morning light struck the asphalt, the gold veins beneath it glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat I couldn't silence inside my own chest. The ground beneath me trembled once. Down in the valley, one of the rollers stopped moving. Its operator stepped out, confused, staring at the fresh pavement. The road was breathing. At first, I thought it was just the heat, the mirage shimmer of asphalt on a summer morning. But the movement beneath the road was too steady, too deliberate, Each pulse rolled through the valley like a slow heartbeat, bending the air, rattling the equipment, setting the mirrors of the trucks trembling. The ranger's voice still echoed behind me. "They're nearly done, eh?" I ran. Down the ridge, boots sliding through gravel, lungs burning. Every step seemed to fall into that rhythm. 3. Pause. 3. The closer I came to the highway, the louder it grew, until it wasn't sound anymore. It was pressure, vibrating through the ground, the sky, my ribs. The crewmen looked up when they saw me. I shouted for them to stop, but my words dissolved in the noise. The asphalt rippled under their machines, and from the center of the spiral, the tar itself began to split. A fissure opened like a mouth yawning from sleep. Heat blasted upward, stinking of sulfur and blood. The men staggered back, shouting. I saw their faces, eyes wide, gold dust clinging to their cheeks like pollen. Then the road exhaled. A column of red light burst into the sky. The valley shuddered. Every vehicle engine died at once, their headlights flickering in unison. From within the fissure came a sound halfway between thunder and breathing slow, colossal. Something below was waking. I stumbled toward the nearest truck, yanked open the door, and grabbed the emergency detonator, the one meant for clearing rockfall. Diesel drums and fuel lines ran along the site. It would be enough to burn the valley to glass. Behind me, the ranger was walking down the slope. Only now he didn't look like a man anymore. His uniform hung loose, the fabric stretching over something too long, too thin. His shadow moved before he did, reaching toward the road. "Don't fight it," he said, voice hollow, echoing with more than one tone. "The road's not building up. It's building out. This comes." He gestured toward the spiral, and I saw it. The new highway didn't end here. Far beyond the valley, the asphalt continued lines of fresh black stone snaking into the hills, toward towns, toward cities. The pattern branched like veins through the desert. They hadn't been paving a road. They'd been paving a body. The realization hit like vertigo. I looked down at my hands. Gold dust shimmered faintly beneath the skin, tracing tiny lines up my arms, the same pattern spreading across the land. I could feel it breathing through me. The fissure widened, swallowing equipment, folding the road into itself. A shape rose from the center, wings of tar and smoke, a form that shifted with every beat. It wasn't one creature, but countless shadows joined together. All the faces I'd seen since New Orleans, the carousels, painted horses, the girl at the inn, the miners, Harlan, Torres, each folding into the next, all whispering the same word. "Remember, when it's a miter." I pressed the detonator to my chest. The plastic felt warm, almost pulsing. "Not again," I whispered. The ranger spread his arms, the smile stretching too wide. "You can't burn memory," he said. "You'll only wake it faster. Eh?" The sky cracked with lightning, silent but blinding. The spiral of the road began to glow, every lane line, every golden vein lighting up as the heartbeat accelerated beneath it. I ran toward the fissure. The heat blistered my face. The air reeked of oil and lilies. Shadows reached out, grasping at my clothes, whispering my name in voices that were mine. The detonator beeped softly, its red light pulsing faster. 3. Pause. 3. I looked once more at the world above the hills, the thin strip of horizon. Then I jumped. The fall was endless and bright. I felt the heartbeat stutter. The air became fire. My thoughts dissolved into sound. one last rhythm, a single repeated pattern burning through the dark. The explosion ripped the valley apart. When the light faded, half the mountain was gone. Smoke rose in slow spirals. The new highway lay shattered, slabs of black glass gleaming in the dawn. For a moment, there was silence. Then the wind came, carrying the smell of rain and metal. The ash on the ground shifted, curling into faint lines, spirals that shimmered gold in the sunlight before fading into dust. Somewhere deep below, under layers of stone and fire, something exhaled. And far away, on a stretch of unfinished road beyond the next ridge, 3 faint knocks echoed against the asphalt. 3. Pause. 3. 2 weeks later, the government sealed off the valley. Officially, a fuel line explosion. Unofficially, nobody wanted to be the one to walk back into that place. From the air, the crater looked almost clean. The road was gone. The machinery melted into glass. Satellite photos showed nothing but black stone scorched into smooth spirals, perfect geometry, too precise for accident. Still, they sent a team, 3 surveyors and 1 journalist. They arrived at dawn, the air thin and metallic, the ground still warm under the frost. Every step echoed through the hollow basin, the sound bouncing back delayed, warped, like something breathing beneath their feet. Seismic activity, one of them said. Aftershock from the blast. What so? But when he pressed his hand to the ground, it pulsed once, answering him. They reached the crater's center, where the fissure had been. Nothing there, only a shallow depression filled with dark dust. One of the surveyors knelt, running his fingers through it. He frowned. It's gold. Taines. Before anyone could reply, the dust began to move. Tiny grains rolled together, spiraling inward, faster and faster, until they formed a circle the size of a man's chest. The ground bulged. The journalist lifted his camera. The lens fogged instantly from heat. From the center of the spiral came 3 soft knocks. Pause. 3 more. Then a breath. The gold cracked open like an egg, revealing a small hollow space. Inside lay something blackened but recognizable. A piece of metal, warped almost beyond shape. A detonator. Its red light blinked once. And somewhere deep in the crater, too faint to be wind, a voice whispered up through the glassy stone. Keep building. The surveyor staggered back, dropping the device. The ground under his boots shimmered thin, golden veins, spreading outward in every direction like roots seeking sunlight. The camera fell. The recording ended with one last, unmistakable sound. 3. Pause. 3. The heartbeat of the earth, still alive, still waiting. And beyond the ridge, bulldozers moved again, laying a new road toward the next valley. Story 5. The Golden Mouth Beneath the Earth. The road crews came back in late autumn, when the ash had cooled and the valley was just another scar on the map. They said they were laying a bypass, nothing more. But the earth hadn't stopped breathing. I wasn't part of the new team. I was the consultant, the survivor, the one who could tell them where not to dig. I told them to stay away from the crater. They smiled politely and did it anyway. From the ridge, I watched the machinery crawl across the ground. Each roller left behind not asphalt, but a faint sheen of gold dust, shimmering in the sun. The foreman joked that it looked like the land was gilding itself. At night, the dust glowed faintly. No one laughed then. The following morning, a survey drone went missing. The feed showed one last frame before static, a circle forming in the dust, pulsing like a throat about to speak. And for the first time since the explosion, the sound returned, soft, deliberate, echoing up through the soil. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. The engineers said it was settling rock. I knew better. The earth was opening its mouth again. By the 3rd day, the gold dust clung to everything. It coated the treads of the bulldozers, the boots of the workers, the tools, the tents. Even when they washed, the shimmer stayed fine, particles embedded in their skin like spores. The air tasted metallic. When the wind passed through the valley, it carried the faint scent of lilies and diesel, of something beautiful rotting. The project ran smoothly at first. Then the voices began. It started on the comm radios, fragments of chatter from nowhere. A man's voice saying, "All clear," even though the frequency wasn't open. A woman humming softly, the same tune over and over. A child's laugh. No one wanted to admit hearing them. No one wanted to say it out loud. I was in the operations tent the night the first surveyor went missing. The others said he'd taken the rover out to check a fault in the sensors. The live feed showed his lights drifting across the valley, then stopping at the crater's center. For a long time, nothing. Then, a flicker, his camera turned upward, facing the night sky. The stars above him shimmered, stretching outward into a spiral, as if space itself were being pulled from its center. And underneath that quiet starlight, I heard it again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. When I replayed the feed, the sound had changed. Between the knocks were whispers, faint, layered, familiar. Torres. Harlan. The girl from the inn. Even my own voice. "Keep building," they said together. "We're almost ready." One Stan. The others insisted it was a glitch. They sealed the feed and sent another crew in the morning. They never came back. We found their rover at the edge of the crater, lights still on. The dust around it had hardened into glass, smooth and black. When I touched it, I felt warmth, not from the sun, but from something beating beneath the surface. That night, I dreamed of the mine again, the red light, the voices beneath the stone. But this time, the faces weren't trapped. They were climbing. The gold veins spread across their skin like roots, threading through their eyes and mouths until their entire bodies glowed. I woke before dawn to the sound of engines starting outside, even though no one had touched them. The trucks were idling on their own, headlights pointed toward the crater. Their exhaust rose in perfect rhythm. 3. Pause. 3. By the end of that week, the valley no longer felt like a worksite. It felt like an organism, metal machines pumping, lights flickering like nerves, and the constant, low vibration under the soil, as though the earth itself were drawing breath. The crew didn't notice the shift, or maybe they pretended not to. People will always believe what keeps them working. But at night, when the generators died down, I could hear it clearly. The sound wasn't below us anymore. It was around us, everywhere. The air itself was breathing. When the floodlights flickered, their glow pulsed in time with the sound. 3. Pause. 3. The same rhythm that had followed me from the carousel to the bathhouse, from the mine to the road. That night, a storm rolled in from the west. No lightning, just a deep, endless thunder that shook the valley floor. The gold dust rose from the ground in clouds, spinning upward into faint spirals that shimmered in the rain. The men gathered at the tent windows, watching. No one spoke. The sound of the storm merged with the rhythm beneath the earth until it became impossible to tell which one was real. Then the machines started. Bulldozers groaned to life. Rollers turned. Drills spun. No one was in them. The keys dangled from their ignitions, swaying gently as if someone unseen were working them. Their engines didn't roar, they hummed, deep and resonant, each one striking the ground in perfect unison. From the ridge above, I saw it all clearly. The valley, glowing faint gold, the machines moving along invisible lines, tracing new paths that converged toward the center. They were drawing something, a pattern. At first I thought it was a spiral again, but no, it was more complex, fractal, layered. The design spread outward, looping and branching until the entire valley floor looked like a sigil, veins of light running between the machines like arteries. One of the workers, a young man named Leon, started laughing. It wasn't hysteria, it was awe. He stepped out into the rain, raising his hands. "Do you see it?" he shouted. "It's beautiful. Way." The ground answered him. A single, heavy knock rose beneath his feet. The soil bulged. A wave of molten light burst upward, swallowing him whole. The glow dimmed a moment later, and the spot where he'd stood cooled to black glass. The laughter didn't stop immediately. It just grew quieter, as if it had been pulled downward. I ran, through mud, through the hum, through the invisible pulse that made every breath hurt. The air shimmered gold and red, turning thick, heavy as syrup. When I reached the ridge, I turned back one last time. The valley was alive. Every machine moved in perfect synchronization, circling the glowing crater, pumping and pounding, each engine drawing the same breath. The rain turned to steam as it touched the ground, and the clouds above twisted downward like a funnel. Somewhere in the thunder, a sound began to form, something halfway between a voice and a growl. "We're waking up," it said. And for the first time, I understood. The knocking had never been a warning. It had been the heartbeat of something buried, something old and patient waiting for the world to build it lungs. Now the valley was breathing for it. And, with every exhale, the mountain shuddered a little wider open. The storm never broke. It just hung there, an unmoving bruise above the valley. Rain fell upward in thin streaks, dissolving into mist halfway to the clouds. The machines never stopped. By dawn, the men were gone. Not dead, just gone. Their tents stood empty, tools still warm, food half-eaten. Their boot prints trailed into the center of the valley, into the spiral of light that pulsed beneath the rain. I followed. The closer I came, the louder the sound grew. It wasn't just knocking anymore. It was breathing, chanting, humming, all layered into one impossible voice. 3. Pause. 3. My chest ached in answer. Every step brought that rhythm deeper into me. The ground at the valley's heart was no longer solid. It rippled underfoot, thin and soft like skin stretched over muscle. Gold light glowed through the cracks, brighter now, pulsing in time with the sound. Then the earth opened. No explosion, no quake, just a sigh. The ground sank gently inward, revealing a vast, hollow space below. The machines slid toward it one by one, vanishing into the light like toys dropped into water. I stood at the edge, staring down. It was not a pit, it was a mouth. The walls curved inward, layered with stone and gold and flesh, each fold moving ever so slightly, as though tasting the air. At the bottom, I saw movement figures climbing from the golden glow, slow and graceful, their bodies outlined in shimmering dust. I knew their faces. Torres, Harlan, the girl from the hot spring, even the ranger. All of them perfect, whole, smiling up at me with gold dust gleaming in their eyes. "You listened," they said together, their voices braided into one. "Now help us speak. A few Creesics." The valley answered them, a sound like thunder drawn through bone. The air bent inward, pressing against me, forcing me closer to the edge. My boots slid through the slick mud, my arms shaking as I tried to resist the pull. I looked down again. The golden light reached upward like hands, each pulse syncing with my heartbeat. My reflection shimmered on the surface below, smiling when I didn't. I knew what it wanted. It had followed me through every place, every echo, every silence I dared to fill. I had fed it with my listening. I stepped back. "No," I said. "Not this time." Traction. The light pulsed faster, the voices rising in fury. "You built the mouth. You opened it. You are it. However, the speed..." The valley trembled. From the fissures all around, more light poured upward, thick veins of molten gold threading together in the air, forming tendrils that reached toward me. I ran. Each step struck the earth like a heartbeat. Behind me, the valley roared, the machines twisting into metal serpents of light. One of the golden tendrils brushed my arm, and pain seared through me, not burning, but remembering. For an instant, I saw everything it had ever consumed: the carousel, the mine, the inn, the road, all connected by the same rhythm, the same pulse, the same hunger. The earth wasn't feeding on us. It was speaking through us. When I tore free, my sleeve was smoldering. The wound beneath my skin glowed faintly, veins lit with gold. The sound of the mouth followed me, deep and endless, rising with the wind. "Don't run," it whispered. "Breathe with us. Tan Stafe." I reached the ridge just as the center of the valley collapsed inward. The ground folded in on itself, swallowing the machines, the tents, everything. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, far below, I saw it move again. The golden mouth stretched open wider than before, its surface rippling with light, the glow rising until it touched the clouds. The storm above split open, not from lightning, but from sound. And the valley spoke. One long, slow exhale that carried every voice I'd ever heard, all speaking my name in perfect rhythm. 3. Pause. 3. The earth was no longer breathing. It was awake. I ran until the valley disappeared behind the horizon, until the gold in the sky faded to gray and the air no longer shimmered. The road I followed was cracked, ancient, overgrown, one of those forgotten state highways that never make it to the maps. By the time I saw the first sign of civilization, the sun was low, hanging behind a wall of dust. Welcome to Larkspur. Population 482. A quiet town pressed between dead hills and a single gas station that hadn't seen a full tank in years. The attendant blinked when I staggered in mud on my face, eyes hollow. "You from the site?" he asked. I nodded, though I didn't know which site he meant anymore. He poured coffee into a paper cup, slid it across the counter. "You folks work quick." Heard the new highways nearly connected. No haps. My throat closed. Already. Nauri. He shrugged. They've been paving all week. Working nights, too. You can see the glow over the ridge. Create. I turned toward the window, and there it was, faint, golden light crawling along the horizon like dawn from the wrong direction. That's when the floor beneath my boots moved. Just a tremor at first, gentle, rhythmic. 3. Pause. 3. The coffee rippled in its cup. The shelves rattled. A few cans rolled down, clattering in unison with the rhythm. The attendant frowned. Been happening every few hours, he said. They say it's just the machines. All that new asphalt settling, watching. But I knew that sound. The world was breathing again. I stumbled out into the street. The air was too still. No birds, no wind. Even the clouds above were frozen, stretched thin across the sky. The ground beneath the town pulsed softly, a heartbeat that carried through the soles of my boots. Each exhale brought with it the faint smell of metal and lilies. Across the street, a diner flickered with weak neon. People sat inside, families, truckers, locals, all eating in silence. None of them spoke. None of them blinked. I pressed a hand to the glass. The window was warm. Inside, the people's movements were too slow, synchronized. Forks lifted and lowered at the same time, chewing, swallowing, breathing together. The waitress turned toward me, her face slack but smiling. Gold dust glittered in the corners of her eyes. "You made it," she said, though her lips barely moved. "We've been waiting. It's setting." I stumbled back. My chest tightened. The ground pulsed harder now, the rhythm climbing into my ribs. I could feel it behind my sternum, matching my heartbeat, speeding it up. The sky over the ridge brightened. Gold light rolled down toward the town like a tide. The highway wasn't just coming, it was spreading. I turned to run, but my legs felt heavy, the pulse beneath me dragging each step. Every door along the street swung open in perfect unison. The townsfolk began to walk out, slow and calm, their eyes reflecting the light from the horizon. Each of them breathed in rhythm. Each exhale carried a whisper. Keep building. Reminders. The glow reached the first houses. The asphalt shimmered, slick with light, stretching and crawling like veins, finding new flesh. I ran toward the hills, lungs burning, ears ringing with that endless rhythm. When I looked back, Larkspur was disappearing, not burning, not collapsing, but changing. Buildings folded inward, shapes twisting into patterns too symmetrical to be natural. From above, I knew it would look like a spiral. By the time I reached the ridge, the light had swallowed the town. I fell to my knees, gasping, watching as the new highway connected seamlessly to what had once been the valley. The golden glow pulsed once more, steady and alive. It looked like a map of veins spreading across the continent. And deep inside my chest, something else began to breathe along with it. The map came to me in the form of a hallucination. Or maybe it was revelation. That night, as I lay in the dirt above what used to be Larkspur, I watched the glow crawl outward, threads of molten gold stretching across the plains, connecting towns, highways, and cities like veins feeding a single colossal heart. Every interstate, every road we'd ever carved into the land, every tunnel we'd ever dug, all of it was part of the same pattern. We hadn't built America. We had been building it. The thing beneath, the thing that remembered, it had no name. but in my dreams it whispered one anyway. The golden mouth. When I woke, my chest hurt. Each breath scraped against something hot and alive beneath my ribs. My veins shimmered faintly in the dark, thin lines of gold pushing up beneath the skin. The pulse in my ears wasn't mine anymore. And then I heard it, beneath the surface hum of the earth. Something new, faster, hungrier. A heartbeat. It was waking fully now. The roads were the arteries. The cities were the lungs. And I was one of the many, many hearts. If I couldn't stop it here, there wouldn't be a world left to run to. I stole a truck at dawn. The air reeked of ozone and asphalt. On the radio, every station played the same thing, static punctuated by rhythm. 3. Pause. 3. The map I saw in my dream burned itself into my mind. The pulse converged somewhere in the center of the country, in a flat plain called Glass Hollow, Kansas, once a salt mine, long sealed. Now, the heart of the thing. The drive took 3 days. I didn't eat. I barely slept. The glow followed me, spreading across the horizon like an infection beneath skin. Every town I passed had the same look. Streets too still, people moving in unison, eyes reflecting gold. By the time I reached Glass Hollow, the road was already trembling. Cracks spread across the asphalt like lightning veins, and beneath them, light pulsed, faintly red. The sky above was bruised purple and gold, clouds forming spirals that mirrored the land below. At the town's edge stood a church, abandoned except for the low, steady humming coming from inside. I pushed the doors open. Every pew was filled. Dozens of people sat facing the altar, heads bowed, hands folded. They were whispering, softly, in perfect rhythm. At the front, beneath a cracked crucifix, the floor had opened into a narrow pit that glowed with molten gold. From it rose faint steam that smelled of lilies and burning oil. They weren't praying to God. They were feeding it. The walls throbbed faintly, pulsing with each chant. I could feel the rhythm in my bones, like my blood wanted to join in. I stumbled toward the altar, clutching the last detonator from Larkspur, jury-rigged from mining charges and diesel canisters. It might not be enough, but maybe, just maybe, it could silence the heart. "Don't," a voice said. I turned. A figure stood at the end of the pews, a man half burned, half shining, Harlan. His eyes were molten gold, his smile human and not. "You'll only set it free faster. You're part of it now. Can't you feel it?" Well, I could. The rhythm had synced perfectly with mine. My hands trembled in time with it. "You don't kill a body," he said. "You breathe with it." The result. He stepped closer, the congregation rising behind him, all of them turning toward me with those gold-lit eyes. "Just one breath," he whispered. "One." There was an self. The ground split. The pit yawned wider. Gold light spilling upward like blood from a wound. I saw faces in the light, countless, familiar. Every soul that had listened, every soul that had believed. I closed my eyes. "I won't breathe for it," I said. "I'll end it." "No." And I pressed the detonator. Light swallowed everything. The church dissolved into flame and dust. The sound became one endless note, a scream and a sigh and silence all at once. The air punched from my lungs. The world folded inward. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing left of Glass Hollow. No town, no people, no road. only a black plane of glass, pooling in the dawn. I stood at its center, body shaking, vision swimming. The detonator had fused to my hand. The veins beneath my skin still glowed faintly, dimming with each heartbeat. The rhythm had stopped. Finally. But as the wind shifted, carrying with it the smell of ash and lilies, I heard something faint, so faint I almost mistook it for my pulse. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. The sound came not from the ground this time. It came from inside my chest. And when I exhaled, the glass beneath my feet rippled a perfect golden ring, expanding outward like breath. When the smoke cleared, dawn had already broken. The world looked clean again, too clean. The glass plane stretched endlessly in every direction, smooth and black, reflecting the pale sky like a second horizon. No ruins, no ash, no sound, only the wind whispering across the cooled surface, gentle, cautious, as if afraid to wake something sleeping beneath it. For a moment, I thought I'd won, that the silence meant peace. Then I realized the silence wasn't absence. It was listening. I breathed once. The sound echoed back, faint but unmistakable. 3. Pause. 3. The rhythm had survived. I looked down. Beneath the transparent glass, light stirred faint threads of gold coiling through the cracks, pulsing in time with my breath. Each exhale made the ground shimmer brighter. The detonation hadn't destroyed the heart. It had moved it into me. I knelt, pressing a hand to the glass. The surface was warm again, a slow, steady pulse beneath my palm. It beat once, then twice, then perfectly in sync with my chest. And in the reflection, I saw something that wasn't quite me. A figure standing upright where I crouched, eyes like molten gold, mouth slightly open as though whispering the first word of a language older than sound. All around the horizon, the world began to tremble, just a ripple at first, then waves of motion spreading outward. The glass cracked, gold light leaking through the fractures like veins of living fire. Then came the sound. Not a roar, not thunder, a heartbeat. Slow, measured, terrifyingly calm. 3 knocks. Pause. 3. It rolled across the plains, over the hills, through the bones of the earth, a rhythm that every stone, every city, every ocean began to remember. Birds fell silent mid-flight. Rivers stilled. The wind stopped pretending to be wind. And for the first time since the beginning, the planet exhaled. The sound was endless, a whisper and a scream woven together, the voice of everything that had ever listened. We're awake. Asked. The gold light surged once more, spreading across the horizon like sunrise. And beneath that radiant glow, I felt the earth begin to breathe. The world is quiet now, listener. But quiet doesn't mean empty. It only means something else is listening. Perhaps you've noticed it already in the way your house settles at night, the faint ticking in the walls, the rhythm of your own heart against the pillow. 3 beats. Pause. 3. It's nothing, of course. Just sound. Just breath. That's what they all thought too, until they realized the silence was never still. So, before you drift to sleep, remember, what you heard tonight was not a story. It was a map. A path carved through every whisper you've ever ignored. And somewhere beneath that stillness, the earth is waiting, not cruel, not kind, only awake. Breathe slowly now. Let the rhythm match yours. Let it hum in your bones. If you listen closely, you might hear it again before morning. Soft, patient, inevitable. 3. Pause. 3. And if you do, don't knock back. Good night, listener. Until the next story finds you. Change of Cryzo.